We love taking interesting sources and really digging in to find those surprising nuggets that can shift your perspective. Today we're tackling a topic that, well, many people feel they understand, but our sources suggest it's often maybe profoundly misunderstood. We're talking about idol worship, specifically within Hinduism. And what makes this particular deep dive fascinating is the unique lens we have. Our main source is Hinduism Naidu. Now, he's quite a unique figure. He's described as an SMA specialist that's specialist in meditation and awakening. In his work, also a Kaihatsu master, which points to deep spiritual insight, and a karate master, too. Discipline, practical application. The key thing is he connects ancient spiritual science with insights from quantum physics. So think of this as your shortcut to getting genuinely up to speed on how these, seemingly very different fields might illuminate something as ancient as Murti Puja.
Exactly. And our mission today really is to challenge some assumptions, maybe deepen your understanding. We'll explore the different views on idol worship, look at its deep spiritual meaning within Hinduism, and then get into that surprising connection to modern science through Hinduism Naidu's work. Yeah, the goal is to pull out the nuances, the insights, especially if you're maybe catching up on this or just, really curious about how spiritual traditions and scientific thought might connect.
Okay, so let's dive right in with some of the misconceptions. Hinduism Naidu makes a pretty bold statement in our source material. He says that certain philosophical frameworks, particularly those that have evolved over the last 2,000 years, have been limited in their understanding of practices like this. Idol worship. He even suggests many beliefs lack a profound comprehension of both spiritual science and quantum physics. That's quite a claim. So as we go, maybe think about how this relates to what you already thought.
It is a strong claim. And what's interesting is how deep these differing views run historically and religiously. Yeah. I mean, the source points out that in Christianity, for example, rejecting idol worship is really fundamental. It comes straight from biblical teachings. The 10 Commandments, Exodus 20, Deuteronomy 5, they explicitly forbid making and worshiping idols. The focus is absolutely on worshiping only the one true God.
Right. That's a core principle.
It absolutely is. It shapes the whole perspective.
And Naidu's work helps us understand why some other faiths, like Christianity or maybe Islam, might see Hindu Murti Puja as, problematic. The source mentions a few things. Their own belief systems, focusing on maybe a more abstract God.
Yeah.
Historical factors like colonialism and missionary work.
Yes, and how those encounters framed practices.
Exactly. And also those specific interpretations of their scriptures that define idol worship in a certain way as something contrary to their faith.
Right. And at the core of, say, the Christian perspective is this idea of exclusive devotion to God. So from that viewpoint, any physical object, an idol, could seem like a potential distraction. Pulling focus from the true object of worship, God alone. Or perhaps they're seen as false representations or even like human attempts to kind of control or manipulate the divine instead of submitting to God's will. So the understanding of how you approach the divine is just very different.
It really highlights the gap Naidu points to when he says, and again, this is from the source, that Hinduism and Christianity are miles apart in the depths of understanding on these practices. Now, we're presenting that as his observation, highlighting that conceptual distance he sees. But it's really important. The source also notes right away that many Christians respect and appreciate the diversity of religious practices, including Hinduism.
That's a crucial balance.
It is. And some even find value in learning about different faiths. So it's about offering you these multiple perspectives, avoiding those broad generalizations. The miles apart comment seems aimed at philosophical foundations, not necessarily interfaith relations day to day.
That makes sense.
So, okay, we've talked about some outside views, but what about from inside Hinduism? How does Naidu's work help reveal the actual depth of Murti Puja? What's the spiritual significance there beyond the surface level?
Right, this is key. The source explains that in Hinduism, the idols themselves aren't worshipped as the divine. That's a common misunderstanding. Instead, they are often seen as representations of the divine. The worship, the focus, is directed through the idol toward the ultimate reality it symbolizes.
That's so like a pointer.
Yeah.
Or a lens.
Kind of, yeah. Like a spiritual tool, maybe? The Murti, the idol, isn't the destination itself. It's a focal point. It's a sacred aid that helps a devotee channel their consciousness, their devotion towards the divine, which is understood to be everywhere. It makes something abstract, maybe hard to grasp, feel more tangible for the human mind. It's actually quite a sophisticated practice, really, about focusing inner intention.
Okay, that leads us to a concept Naidu really emphasizes as central here, Brahman. This can be tricky for people outside Hinduism, but it seems crucial.
absolutely crucial. The source clearly links Murti Puja to this fundamental concept. Brahman is understood as the ultimate reality pervading all existence. This idea that divinity is omnipresent. It's everywhere, in everything, not limited to one form or place.
Right, not just up there somewhere.
Exactly. So Murti Puja, when you understand it through that lens, becomes a means to connect with this divine consciousness that's inherent in everything. The idol acts as a concentration point, an anchor for the mind, helping it tune into that universal ultimate reality. It's not about worshiping the object in isolation.
So it's a method, a technique almost, to experience the divine personally, using a physical form to reach towards a formless reality.
Precisely. That's a good way to put it.
All right, now for the really unique part of Naidu's contribution, bringing quantum physics into it. How does he connect these dots? Because, for many of us, ancient spirituality and modern physics seem like totally different worlds.
Well, what Naidu suggests is this really interesting parallel. The core idea he puts forward is that the idea that consciousness of divinity is resident in all things resonates with various spiritual traditions, including Hinduism. This concept that the divine isn't just out there, but in here, within us, all around us, that's foundational to many spiritual paths. And like we just said, it fits perfectly with the Hindu concept of Brahman, that omnipresent reality.
Okay.
So Naidu talks about spiritual science, his term for a kind of systematic, experiential exploration of consciousness and maybe subtler energies. He suggests this internal exploration reveals this deep interconnectedness.
Now, okay, for the quantum physics buffs listening, or maybe just anyone curious about reality's nature, this is where it gets mind-bending. How does our cutting-edge science start to maybe touch on these ancient ideas? How does quantum physics offer a framework that seems to complement this notion of inherent divinity or universal consciousness?
It's fascinating. The source explains that quantum physics, with its emphasis on interconnectedness and non-duality, offers a scientific perspective that complements spiritual views. Think about some of the strange realities quantum mechanics suggests, right? Like entanglement, how particles can be linked across huge distances, influencing each other instantly, non-locality.
Yeah, it's wild stuff.
It is. Or the idea that at the quantum level, just observing something seems to affect it. It hints at some deep link between consciousness and reality itself. Now, Naidu isn't saying quantum physics proves spirituality, not in a lab coat sense. It's more that these quantum principles, this fundamental interconnectedness, non-locality, the weird role of the observer to provide a scientific language, maybe a conceptual framework, that resonates surprisingly well with ancient asites about universal consciousness.
About divinity being resident in all things.
Exactly. It's like finding a shared description of reality's fundamental nature coming from two very different directions, inner exploration and outer observation.
And that really feels like the aha moment in Naidu's quantum dharma. It's not about forcing science onto spirituality or the other way around. It's maybe recognizing that these ancient practices, when you really understand them deeply, not just superficially, can find this incredible echo in modern scientific ideas about reality itself.
It kind of encourages us to look deeper, doesn't it? Beyond what we think we know. And maybe see this unifying thread running through both deep spiritual wisdom and our most advanced science. So, wrapping this up, what does this all mean for you, listening? This deep dive into Hanshi Naidu's Quantum Dharma.
Well, it's a powerful reminder, I think. Our understanding of complex things like idol worship can really shift, can evolve. When we look past those surface takes and maybe rigid categories, we've seen how practices that are often misunderstood from the outside can actually be sophisticated spiritual tools, ways to connect with an omnipresent divine, and how these ideas find these surprising resonances with modern physics, with ideas about interconnectedness. It kind of pushes us towards maybe more wonder and openness in how we look at both.
Absolutely. And if you connect this to the bigger picture, it really encourages us to question our assumptions, doesn't it?
Yeah.
About what knowledge is, how we understand things. It invites us to think about how spiritual science, that inner journey, and quantum physics, the outer observation, might offer these, well, complementary ways to see that divinity resident in all things.
Right.
So the question for you might be, what could that mean for your understanding of the world? Knowing, or at least considering, that maybe everything at its deepest level is interconnected, part of a larger whole. How might that view shift how you see things day to day? Your sense of the sacred, maybe, or even how you engage with science. It definitely gives you a lot to think about.
Powerful questions indeed. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the fascinating intersection of ancient wisdom and modern science. We really hope you continue exploring these connections, questioning those boundaries we sometimes put up between different ways of knowing. Until next time.